I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. In order to listen to this, because it was recorded in New York City, you got to be vaccinated. Those are the new rules, Quo. Vaccination only. Restaurants, bars, entertainment, performance spaces. You got to be vaxxed as of September. How do you feel about that, Andrew Quo?
Good, because I'm making money hand over fist selling these counterfeit vax cards to all the homies who don't want to get vaxxed. It's basically just a Xerox copy of the card and I just write in random information.
I did that intro hoping people would think that we're vax influencers and we're being paid big bucks, $1,000 to tell our listeners that they should get vaxxed in order to go to Clamdo.
Oh, like Cookie Soups and Yo-Yo Ma. Encouraging New Yorkers to get vaxxed. One time I left my cello in a cab. You don't want to leave your vax card in a cab.
This brings up the weird nature of the vax cards themselves. Like, they don't quite fit in wallets. They're awkward. They're made of paper. They're obviously easily fakeable.
Well, yeah.
It doesn't seem like a lot of thought went into, like, the vax card.
There's no McLovin joke here because you don't really have to do much to get a counterfeit vax card. Like I was saying, like I was joking that we can just Xerox them and write stuff in, but you can just do that, I think. Have you ever bought a fake ticket before?
A fake ticket? Like,
yeah, back in the day, like, you know, scalping, going to a concert or like a Wu-Tang show or a Knicks game. Have you ever like purchased like one that didn't, this is before scanning, that one that didn't like work?
No, I never went and tried to go to a UGOD show and got taken by the guys out front selling me fake UGOD ticks.
It was, I mean, I'm dating myself as I always do, but getting tickets to the game, like, for example, when Marbury played his first game at the Garden, it was last minute and I didn't have tickets, and that's when the Garden was pretty sold out, so I went there to scalp my way in. And you had to like know the layout of the Garden, which isn't hard, but you just would have to know what seats were good seats and bad seats in your head before phones and before smartphones. And you had to know the cost of those seats, the general cost of those seats, and what those tickets look like, because the season tickets look different than the Ticketmaster tickets. So all these different things you had to have in your purchasing holster before you rolled up to someone who's trying to hustle you. It was fun, man. I got in for like $70, like pretty bad seats, but I was in the building.
I'm trying to think. I don't know. Now they actually have, at least for the Nets playoff games, it used to be like an image that was on your phone and you could like copy that and I could send that to you.
You mean
but
like
they
a
actually
QR
stopped
code?
doing those too.
Oh.
Now it's this like almost like a GIF almost. You know what I mean?
Nice,
it has like this.
nice.
It has this motion going on, this line that
Yeah.
goes back and forth across the ticket, and it's only available via link. Like you can't copy and paste it. You can only show the link. That was the first time I have seen it, was going to a Nets game against the Bucks.
Yeah. It's so funny. Remember when they used to say like this ticket is non-transferable? Like they bank on it being transferable because that's what creates like the energy for buying tickets. I always thought that was
Also,
a weird
what does that
thing for
even
them to say.
mean? Like, oh, you can't give this to someone else. This is your ticket and you alone.
That's just for like liability, right? It's like you're not the season ticket holder. That person is not allowed to sue us for like slipping on a weird end beer, like a beer slick.
When you said you scalped tickets,
Yeah.
can
Or
it be
I bought
used
scalp
for?
tickets.
Well, that's what I was curious about. Is the act of scalping buying and selling, or only selling? Like, yeah, I scalped some tickets.
I believe I
Could
bought
that be
scalp tickets.
could that be copying? Would that verbally be accurate to say I scalped some tickets?
I mean, if I bought you N beer, did I scalp you a beer? No. Did you scalp N beer from me? Like, that's a horrible word, and we've gotten rid of it. It's also gone away. we don't say that word anymore, right? Like,
Well,
we
I guess
don't
my
do that
question
thing
is,
anymore. Yeah.
did we stop using the word collectively out of political correctness, or because we stopped the practice itself?
It's probably both. It was the perfect storm. They say both can be true.
There's these weird things where sometimes human behavior will change due to just technology occurring, right? And a good example that potentially could be, this has not happened yet, is something like self-driving cars that would just get rid of drunk driving. Like there was no decision from, the masses, from humanity, from civilization to actually stop the crime of drunk driving.
Yeah.
It just would cease to exist. That you would get drunk, get in your car, but the car will drive you home. Yeah. And all of a sudden, there will be no such thing as drunk driving in a world where all automobiles were automated.
Yeah, I agree. And on a lighter side of that, it's like tennis, right? No sin bin. But the culture of arguing with the umpire was like Jimmy Connors, McEnroe. I've talked about this before. But now with like ball tracking and like cameras, you could just challenge a play and then there's no arguing. So the whole culture of these personalities has kind of shifted. And now these players that we get are kind of like robotic, like Djokovic and Federer. Nadal is awesome, but like no one's like screaming and throwing down rackets and becoming celebrities that way.
And even with automated cars, how can we stop, say, cops from inordinately stopping black motorists? And you're like, well, with self-driving cars, no one would be able to pull over a car.
Right.
And
Right.
like you would stop police from that activity because they would just not basically technically be allowed to do it because all cars are driving like at the right speed limit or whatever.
Do you think there will be an option as a passenger in these automated cars to be like, gun it, man, I'm willing to take the risk, go for it, robot? And it's like, oh, okay, and it goes pew. Do you think that will be an option for us?
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
mean, to be honest, even if it is a self-driving car, I guess you would have to have proof that mode was automated, because you could also almost surely drive it yourself if you wanted to.
yeah, for sure. You might have to sit with a wheel and the brakes and all that stuff. And
So maybe my optimism about illegal stops, the cops could still say, no, that car was going this fast, and they would be able to pull over a driver, and then the driver would later have to prove that the car was on automatic mode or something.
yeah, and to like boomerang it back to our original thought for this conversation, it's just like all these policies are based off of such weird information, because if an automated car gets into an accident and hurts a passenger, everyone will be like, we cannot have these things on the road. It's like, well, as opposed to 100 accidents a day, we have maybe half an accident on average. But just because a human being's not responsible for their own error, we think it's like this inherently bad thing. And with the new COVID rules in New York City, I'm just like, however you want to read this data, man, this seems like many ways to do this. But like Keith McNally posted this morning, I believe, and all of his restaurants need vax proof to go in. And as usual, he got a lot of ugliness on his socials, but he was like game for it, so it kind of worked. He was like, hey, I own these places and I like my employees, so they're into it, I'm into it. You can
the
still
writing
sit
on
outside.
the wall. Yeah, the writing was on the wall for this kind of evolution for, I don't know, the last month or so, where I think maybe early summer there was collective optimism that everyone was going to get vaxxed, that the numbers would keep going down, that everything would just be good to go, and we didn't really have to turn the screws. And when we've seen the Delta variant get up and popping, it's become clear that that laissez-faire approach to say, hey, just go out there and get your vax, it'll be cool, has not been effective enough in getting a large percentage of the population inoculated. And I think everyone, myself included, even though I'm not involved in the policy here, may have underestimated the power of the anti-vaxxers and their not only widespread reach in terms of the percentage of the population that they have the ear of, but also that people would be that dedicated to not getting vaccinated against a global pandemic. And this seems to be the only solution. I think on this very podcast, a long time ago, I said, I don't know why you would allow people who are not vaccinated to get on an airplane. That seems like the easiest one. Like, you can't get on an airplane if you're not vaccinated. Like, I'm sorry. And we're not going to tell you that you have to go get this in your arm. You know, you don't need the microchip. You don't need to be able to control the weather, all that kind of good shit. But like, you just can't get on a plane. So this seems to be things headed in that direction, like vaccine mandates for employment in the city. Now to get into restaurants, to get into bars, to get into music venues, to get into gyms. The cops are going to have to be vaccinated, or be tested weekly, which they're going to be irate about because they're only 40% vaccinated last time I checked. So this seemed to be the direction that all this was going.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I am pro-vax, and I think businesses should be allowed to dictate their own policy, you know? I am pro-mask, you know, like this goes into mask stuff too, you know, like businesses who require people to wear masks inside. I'm like, this is not a problem, you know. It's easier than the argument of a cultural debate. And you know, it has been co-opted by different ideas, and you know, I think it's different for every country. But in our country, I think like the vax debate and the mask debate quickly cease to become about safety and more about like freedom, which is a whole different discussion. But you know, we're not talking about what people can or can't do with their own bodies. We're talking about like our interpretation of the Bible. You know, it's just like it gets lost so quickly. We're not talking about a basketball game. We're talking about the idea of an individual who's taking his talents for granted. Like, it's very confusing. So with all this vax stuff, I'm like, I've always been for like more masks, you know, making it easier for people to get vaxes, you know, like on the corner. I've always said like there should just be tables for people with needles and like alcohol rub and cotton swabs, just vaxing people. Who don't have computers, who can't make like arrangements on a computer. But yeah, this was always heading this way, and it's going to probably head towards something more severe, like some sort of mask thing that'll get people upset, you know?
I mean, to me, when we look at the numbers in New York, they're better than a lot of places. But those kind of rules are fair, in my opinion. Like, I don't think anyone should be forced necessarily by law to get the vaccine. Mostly because I think about if, say, Trump was still in office and like, here it is, the MyPillow vax, and you're like, I don't want to take the vax that your
it's cultural,
crony
yeah.
came up with, and I'd be like, I don't trust it. He's like, no, look, the FDA has approved it, the MyPillow vaccination. I'm like, no, I don't trust you. So I can understand the shoe being on the other foot. If you are someone who has been deeply entrenched in Fox News and skepticism towards the government and Joe Biden and not trusting the election, I understand there is resistance.
Or if you're LeBron James being like, the government has never done my community right, I don't trust anything you show us.
I get it. I understand the skepticism. And as I've always said, I don't have any anger to spare for people who are like, I don't want to get it. That's cool. If you don't want to get it, that's okay. That is your decision. I think you should reconsider, but I'm not mad at you. But I do think you should have these kind of rules where it's like, look, if you want to help us get past this pandemic and make sure everyone is safe, and you want to eat at restaurants, then you should get vaccinated. Yeah. If you are so skeptical of the shot, then you can stay home. You don't have to go to the Versus and watch the Locks versus Dipset. You can stay at home. Yeah. You don't have to go to the gym. You can stay at home. You can buy some barbells and some, kettlebells and a jump rope, and you can work out at home. Because if you want to do those things without the vaccination, it sounds to me like you kind of don't believe in COVID.
Yeah, and it's also, it's always convenient to what your own preferences are, because like McNally throwing down that rule, which I think is extremely reasonable. It's like, well, maybe you don't like Christmas restaurants. You don't like his brand of wonderful Christmas restaurants. You don't want to celebrate Christmas in August. So you're just like, Keith McNally's the devil. And it's like, well, you don't enjoy Santa Claus, so like French Santa Claus. So maybe a tower of seafood for $150 isn't something you would do anyway. Like, it's a very specific, like he's doing a move, right? Because I think his audience already has a built-in agreement with him that vaccinations are good. And whether that be like coastal elite or just like a slice of a demographic, and then people on socials will come at him, but it doesn't really change his bottom line. It probably pushes his brand even farther. I'm with Fauci. I don't think about Fauci that much. The idea is to convince people to get it, because based off of his expert opinion, his foremost expert opinions, is that this vaccine is good for people. So he understands why people are reticent to take it, but it's his job to convince and incentivize people to do it. And his way is not to give people a free beer or a free slice of pizza, but just like convince people with science. And then after that, he's kind of got nothing much, because when he crosses over into the cultural platform, it kind of loses its meaning.
I think giving people the option to say, hey, do you want to move on from the pandy and you want to get down with non-pandy life? Yeah. Then get this vax. That was, to me, the most mature approach. And a lot of people said, nah, fuck that. Yeah. Okay,
it's
well,
hard
look,
to convince them.
At this point, people have been getting the vaccination for 7 months. We're kind of past that idea of, well, I want to see what this does to people. Or, keep waiting. But now we're like 7 months in. Yeah. A lot of the hype about, side effects and things like that, I think a little of that has died down. But if you were still beating that drum about like, oh, I don't know, I want to see what this does. Okay, cool. Like you can just stay home and do that. But where I was going to before was, I feel like if you look at the numbers in New York, when you're talking about Keith McNally, something like 70% of adult New Yorkers are vaccinated or at least have one shot. So like in New York City, you're not going to get creamed economically by having a policy like that. And I think that's one of the reasons de Blasio was like, look, we can do that here, because in restaurants, we'll probably have more people willing to go out if they think everybody is vaxxed in the building versus less.
Yeah, we're lucky in the sense that as a whole, as a globe, we're lucky in that the Delta variant is like much more contagious than the initial variant, but it's still solvable. I'm just worried eventually we're going to have a variant that is much more difficult to counteract, and it might involve people like you and me being like, you guys need to get a different vaccine now. And that's a whole different set of questions, and I think we shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth this way, but like the Delta variant is somewhat manageable, and we're doing not a great job of it. So it concerns me a bit. But Lindsey Graham got his a breakthrough case, and it was so exhausting because it felt like a basketball argument. But on one side, it was people saying, well, he should have worn a mask. If he wore the mask, he wouldn't have a breakthrough case, probably. And the other side was like, see, your vaccines don't work because he's vaccinated. I'm like, this is so stupid. He should have worn a mask. He should have gotten vaccinated. He's not going to die. That's the point. But and this was just argued endlessly for days, and there was no answer, because either you believe in French restaurants or you don't.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel the same way about masks that you do in terms of like.
I love them, but
I know. I'm saying I feel like if you are in a group that is vaccinated and you are vaccinated, then like, yes, it is safer to wear it. But I also feel like, as I said, there's some personal responsibility at this point if you're a grown adult.
Yeah.
Like, and I think for everyone, you are incurring that risk of getting a breakthrough case. And yeah, like that would be annoying. Like you got to isolate. You won't feel good.
Yeah.
But, back to what you were saying about Fauci, I think there was a study where people said, I think there was 40% of people said they were more likely to get the vaccine if they weren't allowed on planes. And like 10% said they were more likely to get the vaccine if you offered them $100. It's like, stop with the little carrots and stuff. Just say to people, you can't live normal life without a vaccine. That's the solution here. Like, you want to get back to how things used to be, then get vaccinated and stop thinking about it. Get back to what you were normally doing. That to me has always been like the best motivation. It's not, look, we'll pay you $100, give you $100 if you get the vax. You're like, why would you give me $100 to get vax? My microchip isn't worth $100.
I hear that initial feeling, and I think it would get results. I disagree with it only because it sets a very quick and open-ended precedent for many other things that don't make as much sense. It's like, if you won't do this thing, then you're not allowed to do this thing. And private businesses can do their own rulemaking. And
we do this shit all the time, though, right? Like,
sure.
you can't smoke on an airplane.
Yeah, we do this stuff all the time, but I'm weary of, like, this gets into bigger topics that we've argued for generations, about what we can do with our own bodies and what we have to do based off what the government tells us to do, and who's making those rules, and what the nuances of those rules are. And our presidents are kind of like based off of this argument. And it's interesting. I agree. If you incentivize people by punishing them, like, this is how law and order works. We have rules
about vaccinations for travel that's been going on for decades.
Totally. And I think it's not black and white. I think it would prove to be beneficial, but like, it is something that I think isn't as simple as just like throwing down the hammer, because, as we said before, a lot of people don't believe in the pillow vaccine. And why should I not be able to work because you make me take your pillow vaccine? I'm like, we can have this discussion, and I don't agree with it.
I do understand if you are down the rabbit hole the other direction, you would say this is unfair.
And they don't think it's a rabbit hole. We're in the rabbit hole.
No, of course, but also They are fucking wrong. They are fucking wrong. And like, we
I
don't
believe
need to
so,
do.
But like,
of course, they're fucking wrong.
But there's no anger here. Like, before.
No, I'm not mad. I'm mad at the idea that we have to make it ethically like relativist. Like, well, who's to say who's right or wrong? No, they are wrong. They are wrong.
I balk at that. I'm not even gonna push back on that, but we'll let that float out there. But I don't agree with this direction. But I hear you. It's something that I think is definitely valid.
I mean, I do understand and have some sympathy for them having like the wrong opinion, and that's why I'm not saying they should be forced to have it by law.
Sure.
But I am saying they are wrong.
I believe that
they are wrong, and I know like the government being run by, say, a Democrat, like, makes that wrongness vulnerable to like being bullied. And if it was the other way around, I would not like it. I totally acknowledge this, 100%.
Yeah.
That if I thought I was right, and say the Republicans were like, we're going to pass rules that no one can get vaccinated, I'd be like, well, this is stupid.
Yeah.
That's not fair. Or it was the MyPillow vaccination. But no, I do understand this. But that said, it doesn't have to be totally like hypothetical, because we know what this is. It's a once in a century global pandemic that there is pretty clear science on the vaccine about. Like, this is not like a opinion. This is not based on like these amorphous ideas. I understand that it can be theoretical, but in this situation, it's pretty concrete.
I mean, I ran out and got my vaccine the minute it was available to me. The only rule was like I was not willing to lie for it. And as soon as I didn't have to like fake that I worked in a restaurant or anything, I went out and got it, you know. And I'm for it. I've not worn a mask. I've been into it, but I hesitate at like turning this into a wrong, right, winning, losing thing, because that's all I hear about people who believe in pizza conspiracies and basements that don't exist. This is, and you know, like, I know a lot of people who are passionate about one thing or another get frustrated at people like Fauci, who are just like, well, I'm not going to insult people. It's like, well, why don't you? You're right. And he was like, this is not what we're here to do, you know? And it infuriates a lot of people when Fauci doesn't dig in. So like, I just hope people get this vaccine, you know, like, I don't know how to incentivize people sometimes.
Well, I guess that's what we're discussing here. Like, how would you incentivize them?
Yeah. Availability. I don't think you can tell people how to talk, like encourage people how to talk about it in a better way. But
I mean, just not to cut you off, even though I'm cutting you off. It's like, it is accessible though. It is everywhere. Like you can get it anywhere in New York City at any time. They'll come to your house. It is deeply accessible. At this point in New York, if you don't have it, you are trying to avoid it. Let's just be clear about that for New York City. So now I'm just bringing it back.
Or you don't believe in it, right? You're not avoiding it. You're just like, you're like, I was never going to get that.
But I'm saying, I want to ask you that.
So how do you make that easier?
Well, I want to ask you that same question. Is like, how do you convince people to get it without there being some sort of punitive angle, while acknowledging that like it is really, really easy to get in New York City?
Like, I don't like cops. I don't like prison. So punitive angles to me are just like the thing that we've been talking about for the last year, right? Like, stop punishing people for shit that you believe. I believe in this science of this vaccine. I believe in the masks science of this vaccine, so I'm all for it. Convincing people is the $1 million question that every politician would love to know. Like, how do I convince people that I'm right?
I mean, in my opinion, I think the approach that they went with first, I was always dubious about, but it seemed like the right one, just hoping that people get it. That didn't happen, and I think
get the vaccine.
We're going to have lotteries. Yeah. We're going to have lotteries. We're going to try to incentivize it with nice things, and you'll be entered into a sweepstakes for a car. Yeah. We'll give you a sandwich, the biggest sandwich in the world. We'll give you ancient grains, each more ancient than the next. And if that didn't work, we got to the point where it's like, okay, now there's going to be some personal ramifications if you don't do it, because you're not allowing the rest of us to get back to our regular lives. So my thing is, this natural progression, I feel like it's fair. It's gotten to that point. I just don't know a good way
would you
of winning
tax
people
people
over.
Would you,
I don't think
would you have
it
a
should
vax
be
tax?
I don't think it should be
That
economic.
kind of punitive, right?
No.
But what
I don't
kind
think
of
it should be
punitive?
economic. I don't think it should be about your health insurance. I think it should be, when I say punitive, I mean you can't go to a movie theater. That's for people who are vaccinated. Like, you can't go to a restaurant. That's for people who are vaccinated. I think that's the kind of punitive thing that I'm talking about. That, like, these are not necessities. You can go to the supermarket.
Let's say the first person who works in the movie industry or the food industry is like, this is my livelihood, but I don't believe in the vaccine. How can you prevent me from earning a living? Like, how do we deal with that?
But this is what I'm saying. I'm not mad at people for having the wrong opinion, right? Like, I'm not like, hey, you suck. You're ruining this for everybody. That's not how I feel towards people who have mistaken beliefs about the dangers of the vax. I don't have, that's okay. But I'm also, at this point, I don't think other people need to be respectful of those beliefs. I don't think we need to sit here and say, well, you have this insane theory that, Bill Gates did this and that, and we need to respect that. So therefore, you can go to work at a nursing home, or you can be a cop and not be vaccinated.
I mean, there's
like
nurses
that to me,
who believe in Jesus Christ, right? And like, if people have like sinned or not. You know, like.
All right, so before we move on, I'm giving you my reason for saying I think they need to start saying yes. You can't go to a restaurant. You can't go to a gym. You can't do this. If you work for the city, you have to do this, because now we're already 6 months into vaccinations and they've stalled out. So I'm just, before we go on, I'm just asking you, what is your strategy if it does not involve doing those kind of things? And we know that people have access to vaccinations. What is your strategy for getting more people to put that shot in their arm?
I think it shouldn't be a mandate. I think each restaurant should be able to maybe figure out what they want to do. I think we should keep on working to try to incentivize people to take the shot. And again, like folding tables, getting community outreach, like all these things, like we say about like crime, right? Like instead of arresting people, like sending out someone to talk to them, like a team of people. I think it's about like more of a on the ground situation than it is like a Albany legislative situation. I think it needs to be something that is even simpler than breaking the rule or having a rule. I think people have to be encouraged face to face, and I think there needs to be more community outreach in a bubble like New York City. Maybe so.
I think that's something that should be part of this strategy as well. Anyway, we've already burned a half hour of this incredible free agent basketball podcast on vaccinations.
Malik Monk and Carmelo Anthony just signed with the Lakers.
Yeah, I saw that. Melo, let's go. I wish he came back to New York, but that seemed too good to be true.
That would have been incredible. And what's more incredible is him being with LeBron in the Lakers.
Come on. There's got to be a few Banana Boat members they can rustle up. Can we get a D Wade out of retirement to the Lakers Shams blast?
Who was the fifth Banana Boat member that wasn't on? Oh, it was Carmelo. He wasn't actually on the banana float. He wasn't in the photo. He was having some wine on shore.
And is Gabrielle Union, is she like an honorary Banana Boat member?
Let's do it. She knows more about hoops than most people. Yeah.
Other than the new RX Poppy album, Pap versus the World, which I've been listening to, it's pretty good. I like it. Stuff is very consistent.
Oh, it sounds like you might be not blown away by it. Can you talk about it more?
I'm just bothered that the intro and outro are so much louder than the rest of the album.
Oh, is it a mixing issue?
Yeah, it's really odd. You hear the intro, you're like, okay, that sounds cool. And then the whole rest of the album drops down like several notches. And then the outro is really loud again. You're like, guys, come on, sharpen this up. It's good, though. It's his typical material. There's some bangers on there. He's got some great lines. RX Poppy is the most interesting dude out right now. I stand by him. He did not disappoint me with this album. The mixing did, though. I was like, come on, man.
Predictions are really tough, but do you think we are on the cusp of an RX moment, or do you think this is the RX moment?
I don't have any industry news to share because I don't know any specifics, but from what I've heard, they do have good management now that they've gotten within the last month, and they've probably signed some kind of a deal, whether it's like a partnership, a label thing. They've got an advance of some kind, I believe. That's what I've been kind of clued in on by people who would have more of an understanding of this than myself, but I don't know any specifics. But Nephew's out doing shows in LA. Pappy's putting his new album out. Cookies listeners, tap in to that RX movement.
I tuned into some of the live stream on Hulu of Lollapalooza, and there was no RX presence. I was like, here we go. Opening up for Limp Bizkit.
Crazy.
Do some RX action. And not quite yet, but like soon, I hope. Did you catch any of the Limp Bizkit hour?
I only saw Fred Durst with his luxurious long gray hair and his
Silver Fox,
like nonsensical goatee. I guess that's not a goatee. I guess it's a Fu Manchu. Is that racist?
Not for someone like me, but yes. I don't know. I have not thought about Fu Manchus in a while. I would say a big no. It's not racist at all.
Does that have another name?
Like a thin-ass goatee? Is that racist towards goats? Like Simone Biles?
I mean...
Yeah, I've never heard... You know me and my facial hair. I have many questions about facial hair because I've not been in the game. I don't have that facial drip.
Another name. Like, it's not a handlebar mustache, right?
Okay, I know what those are. It's definitely... no, it was not. But, again... I've never set foot in a barber shop, so I wouldn't... Is there like a cheat sheet that they have up there with all the names of the facial hairs, or do you just point to the picture that you like?
I've never pointed to a picture. I normally just, cut out ones from magazines of John B. and like just bring them with me to the barber shop. And I'm like, I want what John B. has. Give me the Kevin Love. I will take the Evan Fournier.
The Zach Collins, please. Well, Durst, that was shocking. And he let his freak flag fly. I read some article that was like, is new metal the ultimate, like, what was it? The ultimate subculture, or like the ultimate outsider art was the phrase. And I was like, MSG is pretty full every night for a game. I know it's not jam like in the Marbury days, but it's full to the rafters of screaming fans, so I wouldn't call it outsider art.
I mean, I hadn't listened to Limp Bizkit in a very long time, and obviously I know what their music sounds like. And
roll. Yeah.
And I gotta say, when he started rapping, I was still taken aback. Like, oh right, he raps.
I was never a Limp Bizkit fan, man. And there was, when they were performing, I was following on Twitter, and people were like, come on, don't pretend like you don't know the words. This shit still slaps. I'm like, no, dude. We were never into Limp Bizkit. Don't drag me down your Knicks rabbit hole with this.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Look, you geriatric millennials, stop projecting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of the new metal that I enjoyed. System of a Down was cool. I kind of liked Linkin Park. Like, I thought it wasn't for me, but like I got it. Like the album with Jay-Z was a disaster, but I'm like, Linkin Park has some music with a capital M, man. They like matter in the history of rock and roll.
I think System of a Down, and I hesitate to put Rage Against the Machine into that same category.
I don't, but they're close for sure.
I don't really.
I don't like Rage either.
Those would be the two that I would say that I liked the best out of that kind of segment. System of a Down almost was just more rock anyway, but I never liked
prog a little bit.
Prog
rock.
I never listened to Korn or Limp Bizkit or
there was a Korn Limp Bizkit
like
rivalry
echoing through the Madison Square Garden empty corridors right now.
Well, rest in peace to the Slipknot drummer who passed away this week, I believe. But I was never a Slipknot dude, but he had a lot of respect from nerds because when he passed away, there was a lot of tributes, and I checked out like some of the videos people were posting. I'm like, double kick drum god. Like, he was at one point had a kit that flipped facing the crowd in a pentagram, so it went up like 90 degrees. So he was facing the ground and it spun like a wheel. Pretty cool. He was strapped in, obviously.
Okay,
awesome.
Respect.
Let's go.
So
you didn't see what?
Well, I did not see anything other than a couple of clips of. I think he was actually doing Rollin'. And yeah, he had his red sunglasses on. He had his gray hair blowing in the breeze. He had that Fu Manchu. Sorry. Fu Manchu mustache. And
is there a restaurant called Food Manchu?
No.
If there isn't, there should be.
Also, there shouldn't be. If there isn't, there should not be. We're doing the right thing.
Food Manchu.
But it also
go.
It also made me think of Jackass with, your boy coming back, Johnny Knoxville, with, pristine, new fallen snow white hair, and like. Maybe it was just people going indoors for the pandemic, but it was like people reemerged with their like true ages showing.
No, I thought people would emerge like skinnier with new like Botox and more Zach Collins-ish hair. But no, we kind of let ourselves go, which I appreciate. 1 year does a trick, man. Well, it's longer than a year and a half, let's say.
I mean, I don't feel like most people came out significantly portlier necessarily. And especially at this point when everyone's kind of been back doing normal things for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
But I do think in the case of these guys specifically, people were just like, yeah, I can't necessarily keep up with my hair dyeing routine. Like, people became more comfortable, I think, with who they were.
Yeah. I mean, talking about being comfortable with who you are, I think we're having like a Gen X moment right now. It's pretty tranquil, but maybe it's barking a little bit, man. Have you seen the new Balenciaga Incredible Hulk collabs?
I saw you tweeting about it.
Insane. I wasn't even sure if it was real, but it was the same kind of like yoked out, not like Jack Kirby era Hulk, but like 1998 drawing of Hulk in a standard foreshortened pose and the same image on black everything. Masks, backpacks, long sleeve t-shirts, sweatshirts, short sleeve t-shirts. And I'm like, this is kind of awesome. This is like wearing a Toon Squad jersey the week Space Jam #2 comes out. There's an unfuckwithability to it that I really love. Like, Ben, picture yourself. Mm-hmm. You're fully vaxxed. You're going to meet a bunch of fully vaxxed homies at Clandestino. Mm-hmm. There's many drips to pick out. You have your facial drip. That's like already set.
Your eyebrow drip looks fantastic.
Mm-hmm. You have the new Cookies wrap tees you could wear. Mm-hmm. You could wear a classic Cookies. You can even break out an old big face t-shirt. Or
the most OG product of them all.
Yes, that's right. Or you can rock a Hulk Balenciaga tee that costs like $300.
$550.
Are you serious?
Yeah, the Hulk hoodie that's on $995. The
And
Hulk tee is $575.
It's
Saks
amazing,
Fifth Avenue,
isn't it?
Or Netta Porter.
Yeah.
Well, what's amazing is
Yeah.
you've got to be able to get a really similar Hulk tee on, eBay for next to nothing. But but that's also the whole point.
Yeah, it's on Broadway near Woodhull. You can get all these backpacks for kids. But right, this is a flex that I really enjoy. It's just like, oh, you want collabs? We're going to show you the shittiest one possible, and it's kind of amazing, and you want it. Like,
yeah,
isn't that some Limp Bizkit Lollapalooza 2021 shit? It's like, we know you want this.
Yeah, is it the people really care about the Hulk and the nostalgia for the Hulk, or is it the idea that it's a stunt to like wear a shitty t-shirt that has the Hulk on it that costs $600?
I don't want to be racist towards subcultures like comic book fans, but
or green men.
Yeah, but and this is to my point. I was, we argue about stupid stuff like, is Malik Monk a better shooter than Devontae Graham, and how much do they cost? And we can do a whole pod based off of that. I was standing around on a street corner, and I overheard two kings arguing about who would win in a fight, the Hulk or Wolverine. I loved it. It was like, yo, man, the Hulk just has that berserker mode where he's like, he doesn't care if he's getting cut up. I know Wolverine heals instantly, but like the Hulk could do so much damage so fast that Wolverine couldn't even recover. And I'm like, I love this so much. And I followed them for a block. It was cool.
Yeah, that's like when I hear a basketball discussion, I just start listening in. I don't chime in, but I just listen.
During the Hawks Sixers series, I heard somebody on Essex Street being like, Trae Young will win because he's old school and he just has no fear. And I was like, go on. But he just kept on repeating that sentence, and I was like, I gotta veer off here. Do you have another take? And I had to go home, unfortunately, with my ball, with no one to play with.
Yeah, I was talking with someone recently, and I didn't disagree with their point, but they just kept saying blank player is a bucket. I was like, yeah.
I love it. I love it. I mean, the Knicks
I'm
got
like,
some buckets.
I'm
so
not
whatever.
disputing it. It was just like applied to like, or like a hooper. It was just applied to basically like everyone who's discussed. I'm like, I know we're talking about NBA players, man.
Yeah, I had
Like
a
Jared Dudley, they're like, Jared Dudley, that's a hooper. I'm like, yeah, that's true. What about Trevor Ariza? He's a hooper. Wes Matthews, hooper. I'm like,
basketball
okay.
player.
They are literally hoopers.
I had a long conversation with one of a mutual Cookies Hoops, a mutual friend of ours, a Cookies Hoops fan that shall remain nameless, and he was a big Nets fan, and we were talking about like, what if the Nets won that trade with the Celtics? And we had 20 minutes, I'm saying, like as his kids were running around, we were in the park on a birthday, it was cool. And then finally he drops the line to me, it's like, after all this talk, what I really care about is buckets. And I was like, oh? I was like, okay, recalibrate. I'm like, I hear you, man, definitely. And it was the end of the conversation. And maybe in his mind it was like, I just want to get out of this fucking discussion. And that was the way to do it.
So before we get to talking about actual buckets, do you have any more thoughts about Limp Bizkit, Jackass, Incredible Hulk, Lollapalooza? What are we seeing here as far as the Gen X tranquility? Is it being morphed into Gen X hostility, or is this just the bitterness of the millennial? They are the most bitter of generations. Like the Zoomers, I think, are optimistic and emotionally intelligent. Gen X just opted out and invented all of the culture that everybody likes. Millennials, trapped in the middle, they are an angry, angry group. Is that what this is about? The Limp Bizkits and the Woodstocks? Is this when millennials first glimpsed their own internal rage?
I think the idea that Gen Xers weren't full of gross ideas is hilarious. But I think I think as Gen X gets older, it's not a cultural power grab, but it's more of just like kind of time flipping over. So, as we're seeing Simone Biles like come back and win a bronze medal, and people talking about mental health and being like all these discussions around stuff that Gen X kind of kicked off, in my opinion, especially when our most famous and beloved poster boy checks out of life, Kurt Cobain, and I think it's an interesting thing that's happening. It's taken quite a long time, 2021, but maybe it takes a couple of decades to really see how a generation forms. But Gen X, I think, is an angry generation and kind of stuck between opportunities. And
I don't know if Gen X is nearly as angry and bitter as like the older millennials.
This is hard to parse because who are we talking about? Like, even if we talking about like politicians,
not
athletes,
every
analysts.
Well, clearly not every generation is just one homogenous.
Who is framing
block
this though? It's writers, right?
I'm just talking
Like,
about
who
us.
is framing it?
I don't know who's framing it. Me and you, Cookies
yeah.
Hoops. We're the framers.
Right. And we're both writers. October 19th, The Joy of Basketball, pre-order now from
Boom.
Abrams Books or your local bookseller, if you can possibly. We have all the links on our website. But I think things are very poorly framed. For example, basketball players, if in the wrong hands, tiny green hands, it's framed in a way that convinces everybody that certain things are bad when they're not bad. And the framing of Gen X as this Ethan Hawke, Steve Zahn, like, whatever, man. I'm like, I always thought of the record store as a hostile place. I thought that was a place where there was bullying and like the traditional cliques forming in any kind of cafeteria where a lone Nick sits and has their Panda Express.
I mean, that can be true. By the way, I ran into this guy named Miggy.
Oh.
And he's like, you know Andrew Kuo, right? I'm like, yeah, I do. He's like, I met him when he was like in college.
Yeah, put out one of his records when I was 16.
Yeah, that's what it was. He's like, I met him when he was a teenager. And he was like, can you please say what's up? And now I'm doing it on Cookies. But this is Miggy saying, hey, to you, Andrew Kuo, who he's known since you were a teen.
Miggy is a legend. Miggy was in a bunch of hardcore bands in DC, like the Assassins. Ended up with his brother Daniel and his wife Elizabeth in a cool singer-songwriter band called Ida. And Miggy is one of like the great archivist record collectors, sellers in New York City. He is a legend and he's awesome. So shout out to Miggy Littleton.
I will convey that message back to him if I run into him that you have now said, hey, what's up?
He's a big deal. Shout out. That record was awesome. It was with my zine, my punk rock zine called Trash Heap, and it was a split 7-inch with this guy, the singer from Superchunk, who you met at my opening, who's great, who rocks Cookies gear all the time. Mac McCon, he does a project called Portastatic, and Miggy's band Ida. It was such a thrill for me to put that out, but it killed my love for doing it ever again because it was so expensive for a high school kid, man. Woo! like 4 figures just blew my mind.
And yet, now, 7 years after high school, it is still appreciated.
Yep. My apologetic Zoomer ass appreciates all my opportunities.
Well, speaking of trash heaps, the Sixers have signed Andre Drummond. Okay, well,
I love it.
that may be... Should we just get that out of the way, or do you want to talk about...
You brought it up, man. Let's do it.
Okay. I gotta say, man, I think part of me was holding out some hope that Daryl Morey was going to really put some bullying on Doc Rivers and say, you're not getting a center. I'm going to hold out and see if we can get Ben Simmons traded for a superstar. Otherwise, we're going to run it back with the kind of roster that I envision. And this is all projecting the kind of roster that Ben Dietrich, would envision. But I was like, don't bring another center here. Make them play B-Ball Paul or Simmons at center in this scenario where he's returning. And, now I'm like, Andre Drummond? I don't know if there's another signing. I guess maybe short of Dwight Howard, but this is even worse. That could make me lose faith in the Sixers having a worldview than signing Drummond. Because on one hand, to me, I'm like, well, can you please now trade Ben Simmons? Like, just please do it. Whatever the politics of the situation, whether it's him asking out or you trying to ship him out, whatever it is, just get him the fuck out of Dodge. Like, there was no one other than Drummond you could have signed to make me say, just let's get this thing over with. Get Ben out of town. Put him somewhere where he's not going to be around Doc and around a backup center who can't shoot. If anything, Drummond is significantly worse than Dwight as an option to pair with Ben Simmons. And he's coming off of a year where he paired horrifically with guys like Anthony Davis and LeBron. So, I don't know. That signing, to me, just utterly repulsive. Like, I'm not even, like, mad. I'm just disgusted.
I love it.
The worst possible style of player, and it's Andre Drummond. Okay. You win, Doc.
The Knicks arguably got a little bit better, and we could talk about this later with many caveats. Come back to the field, Sixers. Who you got? The Pacers, the Sixers, the Heat, or the Knicks. This pool is all kind of jumbled up. I love it. Less competition in the East makes me happy.
I mean, look, I can't speak for what Daryl Morey's outlook is. Maybe he's like, Andre Drummond, that's a good value. Hey, this guy's been an all-star in the past. One of the best rebounders of all time. Cool. Yeah. But considering what we just saw happen in the playoffs, considering that Doc Rivers went to the grave, that he ruined this season, destroyed a title-capable team by playing Dwight Howard constantly and sculpting the entire rotation around Dwight Howard, to give him another option that is almost exactly the same, that's just crazy. And at that point, I'm like, maybe Daryl Morey doesn't care. Maybe he doesn't have the power that we think he does. Maybe he's just totally willing to acquiesce to Doc in order to have a more comfortable work environment for the time being. Like, cool, Doc, that's your guy. All right. But to do this following the Dwight situation is just like so grim and so deeply irresponsible that like it's very hard for me to look at this roster and say, cool, I'm excited about seeing what happens next year. Really took the steam out of things.
You know, in order to cook the perfect ribs, if you're the grill master, you gotta go slow and low, man. You don't want to overheat. You don't want to like run through the internal cooking time of these things. It takes time to break down the connective tissue. Just lob it into Drummond, pound the rock, use your shot clock, have Simmons in the dunk spot just in case something goes wrong, or replace him with someone like CJ McCollum who could just bail you out if you want to. Can you beat the Knicks at that point? Who knows? Knicks added some firepower. But Daryl Morey, you know, however much I love him, has been on the record and being like, I've missed a bunch of times. I've taken Yee, which didn't quite work out. He was like, I was really into that draft pick. He's like, I thought everyone was wrong about Royce White. I took him. Immediately, an hour later, I realized I had made a mistake, you know? Maybe he didn't say immediately, but like it was clear that Royce White was not joking about his demands as a human being and how they didn't fit into the NBA's lifestyle. And Daryl Morey has not made perfect decisions across the board. He's still the best GM in the league, in my opinion, maybe all of sports. I love his worldview. I love this signing because, like, the Knicks are back, baby. It's good for the East, man.
I mean, before we move on to the Knicks, because I don't really want to.
No, let's stay on
Philly. Okay. It's just that, no, I mean, because they haven't really done anything. You know, like they brought back Korkmaz. There's rumors that Danny Green wants to go elsewhere, which would be a real blow. I just wanted to say this about Daryl Morey. His track record as a GM is great, right? Everyone's going to make mistakes.
For sure.
And I understood the Danny Green trade when he made it. And in retrospect, that trade was horrible. And this is not even a criticism of him. It's just the way it worked out. Danny Green got hurt. He wasn't there in the second round of the playoffs. Al Horford, on the other hand, would have been a vastly superior backup to Dwight Howard, who could have coexisted with Ben Simmons, and they certainly win that series if they have Al Horford instead of Dwight Howard. They would have been a much better team had that trade not been made. And they would not have also given up a future draft pick. Misic, who is a player
I liked
in
him.
Europe who's going to come over. That turned out to be a really bad trade, how it happened. But you don't know what's going to happen to those kind of deals. But yet, it didn't work out well. And the same thing is happening with the George Hill trade thus far. They gave up, I think, 4 second-round picks for George Hill.
Now he's gone.
They included Tony Bradley, who is at least a capable backup center, and then they just decided not to pick up the second year on his contract.
Yeah.
So, like, those were 2 trades where they gave up a bunch of picks. They gave up a couple players. No one, that's going to be a star or anything like that, but, they moved off the Horford money. Neither of those trades worked out. And this is not to say I'm attacking Daryl Morey. I'm just saying, like, your point before, that sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes you make errors. And even though you're good at your job, you make mistakes. I don't hold those moves against him. I think you can say they didn't really play out the way that was expected. But the signing of Drummond, like,
not good.
Again, I don't know that you could have brought in someone else that would have made me less enthusiastic about watching the Sixers this year.
This is just going to be an echo chamber of hate for this fan base because it's hard to finish above number 1. It's hard to be better than a number 1 seed in the regular season, which the Sixers were with Dwight Howard and Ben Simmons. So there will be, I think if Simmons is gone, and if, depending on who they get back, obviously, and if Drummond gets real playing time, I think, and the Nets are healthy and the Bucks are feeling good, I think we're looking at like a 3, 4, 5 seed, maybe. And Sixers fans will be like, well, it all depends on what happens in the playoffs. And the same thing will likely happen in the playoffs. A good team might give them a run for the money, and it'll be a coin toss at the end.
I mean, Doc Rivers can't beat a good team in the playoffs. It's not going to happen.
I don't think so either. But it was a coin flip, you know.
But they were a lot better than the Hawks. They weren't just a little bit better than the Hawks.
It shouldn't have gotten to that point.
They were a lot better. Right. They were a lot better than the Hawks, and they were even still quite a bit better than the Hawks without Danny Green.
Like that was surprising. I thought the Knicks were better than the Hawks. Whatever, you know, like
Hawks are building something smart. They've got a lot of good young talent, but Philly losing that series, Brett Brown wins that in 5.
I think so too, but you know what I mean. So all these things can indeed happen. So like, it took Knicks fans maybe like 20 years to come out of the tranquil Gen X end of things, and we're building more anger, so it's going to like cycle through more anger. But I just encourage Philly fans to just like mitigate your expectations, because like this seems farther from a championship team than ever before with these two guys.
At this point, I don't see how you avoid trading Ben Simmons at this point. Like, you would bring in Drummond. Is that something just that Doc Rivers says, I want this guy, and you say, yes, cool? Because if that's the case, after seeing what happened last year, then you've ceded to be the actual GM. And if Morey is like, yeah, that's a good deal for us, let's get in Drummond.
Yeah, maybe he likes him.
Right, knowing that he doesn't fit with Simmons, well, then hurry up and get Simmons the fuck out of Dodge and send him somewhere that he can play without Doc and without, a backup center who can't score within 2 feet of the hoop. Like, just get on with it.
It's worth noting the Trailblazers have not made any moves. They've kept their guy Norman Powell and nothing else. So it's worth noting that Damian Lillard had demands.
Lying to our audience.
Uh-oh.
They got a Zeller.
They got which Zeller?
And Zeller.
All the Zellers are destined to play in Portland.
I mean, I couldn't even tell you if the other Zellers already played there, or are currently playing there, or will play there in the future. It is just a circular Zeller, like, ambience going around Portland. Like, all Zellers have, are, and will in the future play for Portland.
All right, so let's talk about the rest of the league. And Sixers to be continued. I don't think that will be their last move this week, so we can even do an emergency pod. But
let's talk New York Knicks. Andrew Cuomo, run it back.
Do this.
Hashtag run it back. Basketball has returned to the Mecca, and it's going to be returning exactly the same way next year. How do you feel?
Well, with a slight accent. A slight French accent, yes. As if it's a Christmas team now. It's Christmas every day at the Garden. Evan Fournier, they paid him a lot of money. I would not have targeted him. I would not have paid him that money, but he fits a role. He's a need that they desperately wanted, and he's a tradable piece. So whatever. He's kind of young and he's not bad. So whatever. I think this is just like me getting into too much capology, where I should just at this point be like, they really needed some points. And signing Burks was great. He's a bucket getter. Fournier is a better bucket getter. I love just bringing back Nerlens for 3 years makes me happy. So whatever happens. I wanted Nerlens to go to a better team to get a chance to like make $15 million a year and maybe be in a bigger spotlight, but I'll take him on my favorite team. That's cool. Derrick Rose, I don't care. But so the opposite end of that, I'm happy they decided to try to repeat their formula. The other side of that is like, this money was not spent the smartest way. I don't know what motivates Leon Rose or James Dolan at this point. And this is fine, but there was no reason to sign Fournier to that deal. There was value elsewhere that could have been had, as we always talk about on this pod. Like there's points to be had, whether in the G League or at the end of your bench, or someone else's bench. You don't have to like pay Fournier that much money.
I mean, it's hard. I'm torn on this because I do think in this era of point inflation and efficiency inflation and just the the monsoon of combo guards that have descended upon the league. They are absolutely everywhere.
Sure.
And he is one of those kind of guys where he can sort of play point, he can play the two.
He's not bad. He's
you
okay.
can put him at the three. I just mean he can be your sort of your primary ball handler, but he's probably your second one. I think he is a pretty good player. And I think the difference between him and someone that we view as being a star, and by that I mean, let's just say, for example, his teammate last year with Boston, like Jaylen Brown. Like, is Jaylen Brown better? Yes.
Of course.
But I also think the difference between those two is a little bit less than you'd expect. So, like, if all you have to do is overpay Fournier by a bit, like, I don't know. I don't find that like the worst option, because by default, getting someone to sign with you in free agency generally means you are winning a bidding war.
Yeah.
You're not getting value.
Boston
You're
wanted to cheat.
outbidding everyone.
Yeah, it was an open secret that Boston was trying to create space to sign him. I don't know what happened.
But I'm saying, to get a Jaylen Brown, right, you'd have to either pay him $30-some million a year, or you'd have to trade assets, a bunch of them, for the right to pay him $35 million a year. So I do have some sympathy for saying, hey, we don't have to give up shit for Fournier. We don't have to give up anything for him. Jaylen Brown averaged like 26 points per 36 minutes last year. Efficiency around 60%, assists 3.5. Fournier per 36 minutes last year, average
21 points.
Average 21, 4 assists, similar efficiency. Again, Brown is a better player, but not having to give up shit in order to have Fournier on your team to give you replicable production, I'm okay with it. I think it's undeservedly being hated on because of the fact that you don't have to give up anything except for money.
Oh, I don't think it's being hated on. I think people like Fournier because he's a bucket getter, from what I can see. But Tim Hardaway signing early on in the evening kind of set the tone. They kind of signed for the same money. They're kind of like similar players. So it set the tone. Like Will Barton kind of is the same guy. Mm-hmm. So that seems to be the market for these type of players. And I don't want to get into like my weird brain of like what could have happened. So like this is not bad. Reggie Bullock went for $330. So this was expensive, and this type of player may cost money. They got the cheap end, which is Alec Burks. And they went for the filet mignon in Evan Fournier. So I'm happy. I'm very happy with the Knicks' month of drafting and free agency. I'm ecstatic to keep Nerlens Noel, who's lovable and just a beast of a defender, and to keep this identity that Tibbs wants to continue. And you add McBride, who's legit 3-and-D. This team is lovable. I'm happy. I don't think they're going to win as many games as last year, but they have the chance to come close. The East was not good last year. The East is going to be better this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the Knicks are still going to be a good defensive team. Fournier gives them a little more offensive juice.
They desperately need it.
I think they remain pretty much where they were.
5, 6, 7 seed.
Maybe RJ, because of his age, does make a leap. And if he goes from being, I guess, we would say starter quality to being a borderline star.
He is below starter quality right now. So just being a starter would make me happy.
Again, I just mean internal development, whether we have to argue like where RJ and IQ are on that spectrum, whatever. I just mean improvement from young guys such as them. Mm-hmm. Randall more or less duplicating his performance from last year. Adding Fournier, you're like, okay, I can see us winning a few more games. But also to your point, I'm saying just in theory, you could say we will basically do what we did last year, but there will be internal development, and then Fournier, that makes us better. Mm-hmm. But back to what you said, well, the Hawks are going to be better. Yeah. I think the Celtics are going to be better because Horford makes sense there. And, they have youngish guys who should improve. The Heat are going to be better.
Yeah.
The Nets are going to be healthier. The Bulls should be better. So, just being the same or slightly better doesn't even mean you'll have the same record.
Oh, no,
And it certainly doesn't mean you'll also be a 4 seed again.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be in the play-in tournament. This team's going to be fun. I'm going to enjoy even on the cusp of the play-in tournament.
I guess what I'm getting at is that the Knicks could, in a vacuum, be a little bit better than last year and be like a 7 seed.
Yeah, of course, right. Yeah, because there's a finite number of wins in the East, for sure. Yeah, like, do I want Norman Powell over Fournier? I don't care, to be honest. Fournier's cool. He's kind of tall. Can we talk about the Bulls?
Let's talk about the Bulls.
They got my guy. They got our guy. Everyone wanted Lonzo Ball. I think everyone was pro Lonzo Ball by the time.
As a Lonzo Ball day one.
But he ended up going for less than I thought. Maybe he just wanted to go to Chicago. The Pelicans didn't match, they just like signed and traded him. I thought they didn't.
Well, of course he wanted to go to Chicago. They can't make that trade unless he agrees to it.
No, that's what I mean. And like, I just thought there would be more of a gamesmanship with this. It seemed like it, obviously it took them 180 seconds for them to not tamper and come up with this deal right at 6:00. I just thought he would be overvalued as opposed to maybe properly undervalued. I just thought there would be more of a frenzy for him.
Well, there may have been, but he only picked one of them.
Right. And
like the Pelicans had no particular, I guess, interest, it seemed, in matching anything.
This is what I mean. Like, why?
Which was surprised me. But again, this was all worked out ahead of time, right? So if the Knicks were like, hey, we're going to pay you X amount, that offer would have already been known by that point.
But my question is, I thought the Pelicans should have made some overture, but maybe they did, and whatever. It took 180 seconds. A lot happens in that time.
I don't need to get into a long Pelican discussion, but I think here is where we would say, what exactly are they fucking doing?
I don't know.
Because
I don't know.
You bring in Devontae Graham, who's okay, but you give up a first rounder. You get Satoransky back in the Lonzo trade. So you've gotten worse at guard while giving up a first round pick. I don't see how that gets you closer to being a contender.
The elephant in the room in New York, when they came out, they signed Burks and Nerlens to 3-year deals. On TV, it was like, well, what happens in 3 years? Zion Williamson has the option, and he won't do it. Players usually don't do it, but he's expressed already murmurs that he's not happy in New Orleans and his best friend is in New York. They're like, did New York just do these 3-year deals with that in mind? And I hate that strategy because I think that's a pipe dream. We've seen it with Giannis. We've seen it with all these stars, KD, Kyrie. Like, if it doesn't work out, you're left holding the bag. But, like, shouldn't Griffin be a little bit more proactive in getting better? Like, shouldn't this team be trying to get better players at guard?
I don't know what the plan is, because to me, if you've got Ingram and you've got Zion and you got Lonzo, like, that's your young trio. Like, figure the rest out later. Just keep those guys intact. Letting one of them go on an organization that doesn't necessarily have the ability to sign big name free agents, that at this point is probably too good, or at least, they're mediocre, is probably not going to get another fantastic draft pick, because ones they got back from the Lakers are not going to be worth very much, because the Lakers are going to be good. I just don't see how the Pelicans bring in real talent to complement the guys they have, unless they think Devontae Graham is it, as they would say along Graham Street over here in Brooklyn. Graham. Or Devontae Graham. Those are the three Graham pronunciations. Graham. Graham. Graham.
And they let Josh Hart, I believe. They didn't offer him a qualifying offer, so I believe he can try to sign with another team. There was some drama there. Like, you had Lonzo and Josh Hart in the building, which came over in the trade, like you mentioned. Like, those are guys you might be interested in keeping. But I love this chaos. I thought it was interesting. Do I want the Pelicans to be good? No, I don't care about the Pelicans. I want to see what happens with Graham.
DeMar DeRozan has gone to the Bulls as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that is like one of my favorite
3 years,
destinations.
$85 million. So now the Bulls, who we coincidentally were just talking about, have
That's cool.
Lonzo, Caruso, DeRozan, Vooch.
And Levine.
Does Levine work under the same cap structure?
That's a good question. Shout out to
know.
Trey Kirby, man. He must be excited. That's cool. I mean, I was joking when Lonzo went to the Bulls that it's like sending him to Siberia, because like the post Jordan era Bulls has been like, I mean, Derrick Rose was a very bright light when he was there, but it feels like such a weird midtown beige city sports team kind of to me, where like you've had this kind of electrifying player in Zach LaVine there for years, and we've kind of let him fly under the radar. I don't know. I want there to be juice back in Chicago, and it might be like they might have to change their name to the Swamp Dragons because it's so attached to Michael Jordan. It's hard.
I like DeMar DeRozan. Go get your money. He's become
He's good.
He's become a more valuable player than he was in the past when he was
For sure.
kind of just a
Jump shooter.
bucket getting mid-range foul drawing guard. The Spurs pushing him to play the 4. He's gotten a lot better at passing.
Yeah.
That said, I don't know that I love that deal for Chicago, even if I think it's cool that he went there.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know. I'm looking at him like they're paying him $30 million a year, and without getting into the econometrics to it, I'm like, they're paying him a lot. That's a lot of fucking money for DeMar DeRozan.
He was good in San Antonio, though. He went to the line quite a bit. He showed wrinkles to his games. He regressed in his 3-point shooting again this season. He's just not comfortable doing it, and we just have to accept that. I think he had a good season. He showed signs, and then he decided that wasn't part of his game. I quite like him in 2021. That kind of volume scoring is his kind of volume scoring is kind of harder to get, than a Jordan Clarkson. He does damage offensively. Do I think
the Spurs figured out how to use him? They made him a far more efficient scorer. They turned him in. They capitalized on some of his passing skills that I think that Toronto had unlocked a bit, and the Spurs, really opened that up. Or at least the last season, his assist percentage was 32%, which is the highest of his career. Dwarfing a lot of those years in Toronto. I do wonder in Chicago though. That's 3 guys who are poor defenders in your starting lineup between him,
Vucevic is not the
Vooch,
best big,
and Levine. That's 3 pretty lousy defenders. I think offensively you can score a bit. I mean, because Vooch can shoot, Lonzo can shoot, Levine can shoot, Caruso can shoot. Having a mid-range guy in that mix is okay. This is not like a 3-point snob argument. Yeah. I'm just like, it's a lot of buckets.
Also, as of now, Kobe White and Lauri Markkanen are still there. I think they're going to be gone any second now. Not the greatest defenders either. Sounds like they need some Knicks culture up in Chicago.
Frankie Smokes, where are you?
I love him. And the Knicks, I just want Frank Smokes to get some playing time somewhere and be that French superstar.
Well, let's talk a little bit here about another Eastern contender. This one is going old school, as in angry, bitter, geriatric millennials. The Miami Heat. They have added 36-year-old Lowry, 36-year-old PJ Tucker, to a core that's built around Jimmy Butler, another guy in his early to mid 30s, and then you've also got Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, your boy Tyler Hero. But this is a fairly old team.
The wagon's pulled up to South Beach, man. Back it up.
Looking at the other East contenders, you're one of them. How scared are you of playing the Heat in the playoffs?
Because of the numbers that you rattled off, their ages, I love Kyle Lowry. I am not that terrified of this Heat team because I think before the Kyle Lowry ad, they were like a play-in team that probably loses in the first round over and over with Bam, Hero, Duncan Robinson, and Jimmy Butler. Awesome players. And then they add kind of one of the few basketball geniuses in the league currently who just does so much without the ball, who does so much, I heard, in the locker room, and also as a player with the ball. Like, he is an awesome, awesome player. That said, he's going to be 36, I believe. He's 35 currently, according to Googs. And Google, not Tom Gugliotta. And, like, he's already missing games because of injury. Like, if he can be 90% in a 7-game series for you, that's amazing. Getting there will be the challenge for the Heat, and, like, that's a frustrating proposition. I am, like, can they beat the Knicks in a 7-game series? Probably. Yes, I think so. Bam is awesome.
I'm going to say yes.
I think yes, too. But, like, is it an automatic? I'm not sure.
I'm going to say yes on that because they have 3 players better than anybody on the Knicks.
I think so.
This is not Knicks hate. I just mean...
If they can get there. So this is my point.
I'm with you that Miami is not that... Right. They could get hurt. I'm with you that Miami is old as dirt. They are fucking old. I like
Lowry
all these players they got
this season. Yeah.
But like $90 million to Kyle Lowry. I want him to get all his money. He's made it clear. He's like, I want generational cash. I want to take care of my ancestors. My not my ancestors, my descendants.
Seed. Okay, yeah. Right.
My seeds, my descendants.
Yeah.
Great. Get all your money. Take it all. Take it all from Mickey Aronson or whatever his name is. Get it all.
Yeah, fuck it.
But it's a lot of commitment. Roughly quarter of your salary cap going to a guy who's in his 30s, mid-30s, about to be close to 40 by the end of that deal. I think Lowry's defense slipped a bit last year. Now, whether that was a product of them playing in Tampa Bay and kind of tanking and not giving a shit, totally possible. But I generally don't think you improve defensively in your late 30s. So it'll be interesting to see what Tucker and Lowry look like next year. Because while Tuck had some nice minutes, I thought, defending Durant, even though Durant went hammer on him, I thought Tucker performed admirably well. Tuck was not very good this year.
Yeah. I mean, he's old, man. Like, age is real. Yeah. I hate it, right? Because, like, these guys are half the age of Obi Toppin. What do we expect?
I mean, by the way, sorry here. Just to wrap up that last part about DeRozan, Thaddeus Young, Sixers legend, a first-round pick and 2 second-round picks go back to the Spurs in that sign-and trade.
The Hustle Award, the Hustle Man Award winner, right? Didn't they give out a Hustle Award to Thaddeus Young this year?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I feel like Patrick Beverley got it before.
Fair enough. I mean,
or maybe Trez got it. Maybe Trez got it last year. Now that I'm actually thinking about the fictitious Hustle Award that was just invented, I think it went to Trez.
Thad Young, king. I mean, I like Lowry so much. I think when he's right, he's awesome. And we saw a lot of older players get their money. Chris Paul extended 4 years. I heard like the 4th year maybe have a caveat to it. But like you see these older smart geniuses get their money, right? And the logic, I assume, would be even if their skills diminish by a step or two, they still have something valuable to contribute to a team, and you want to get as much of their prime as possible, and you'll deal with the rest later. But, you know, what was left on the board for Miami? Like, I don't know what happened with Lonzo Ball, but, of course, he went for less money than Lowry. I thought that would have been interesting, and at that point, there's not much out there. So, like, I don't really blame Miami for doing this, but I was thinking about the Pacers a bit. like I really love Malcolm Brogdon. He's not as good as Kyle Lowry, but he's a lot younger than Kyle Lowry. They have Miles Turner, maybe will lead the league in blocks if he's healthy. They have Sabonis, who's been to the All-Star game. Like, can they take them? Probably, right? Jimmy Butler's the best player of all of them, maybe? Bam?
I mean, when I look at the Chicago team we just described and their big three of Levine, DeRozan, and Vooch, I'll take Jimmy, Lowry, and Bam all day.
Yeah, Chicago, yeah, to backtrack to Chicago, I love that they're back in the mix, but that is closer to
I wasn't necessarily
than
trying
championship.
to backtrack as much as be like, yeah, the Heat guys are not KD, Kyrie,
Yes.
and Harden. You know,
Or Simmons and Embiid, or Middleton. Drew
no, they're not
Holiday and
quite. They're
Giannis.
not quite there, but they're good.
Yeah,
But
that's a good team.
It's a good trio. It's a
Yeah,
good trio.
I agree, and yeah, that's fun. I think for day one culture, they finally have someone with the correct derriere for the environment, and I think Duncan Robinson signing for that huge money is like, I don't think he's Davis Bertans, but that was a huge contract, and I think Duncan Robinson is awesome, and he needs to be guarded, and he's a rare kind of shooter. Yowza, that was a lot of money. But-
Yeah, I don't know. I'm finding newfound irritation with talking about like whether it was a good amount of money because like
Just cap space, right?
right.
I mean,
because
this is
fuck these owners. Like fuck these owners. Take all their money. Duncan
the owner-
Robinson, $20 million, amazing. Except at the same time, my other side of that is, I feel like last year we sort of saw that those price tags for guys like Bertans and Joe Harris may have been inflated. That we came out of the bub saying all that really matters shooting wise is being an outlier shooter. You got to have that guy. And then what happened this year, we saw that perimeter defense really matters.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the takeaway from this postseason was that like, oh yeah, those anomalous shooters, they're cool to have and all, but like you got to have defenders everywhere. Like that's what you need. And we saw how the Sixers drafted. We saw how Toronto drafted. We saw how the Knicks drafted.
Grimes,
like there's
yeah.
just newfound emphasis on you have to have an
3 and D.
army of perimeter defenders in order to win in the NBA. And like it's a very different takeaway from we got to have a weirdo white dude who can really make it rain from deep. 1 year's difference.
Yeah, totally. And Duncan Robinson, as we've said on Cookies before, is he's different, right? He's like more like Klay Thompson than Reggie Bullock. I just think he is a unique kind of shooter that I only talk about price tag because like we have the stupid rule of the cap. So like I don't care about these owners. These owners should kind of like have no cap and have to pay double for all these players. But this is what free agency is, right? Because the Knicks spent their cap space in a fine way. I'm not even mad. Spend it if you got it. But signing a player like Duncan Robinson handcuffs you. So that's just my only point. Like
Duncan
not that-
Robinson is a great 3-point shooter. He really is. He's one of the best out there. But again, you're paying for one skill set. You know, he's a really good player, and I understand that you've got enough shooting around him that having his spacing is really important. But also, he's a guy who scored 13 points a game. You know, under 2 assists, 3 rebounds. Not a good defender. I'm not trying to hate on him. He is a really, really, really good shooter. But I do wonder if any lessons were learned from the last postseason.
I don't want to be that guy, and I agree to your point. I think I agree. Duncan Robinson is an outlier shooter. He finished number 39. I know it's bunched up. He finished with a 408 3-point percentage. That's number 39 in the league. So like Joe Harris shot .475. Is that right? Damn, that's good. So like he's behind players like Joe Ingles, Seth Curry, Kevin Durant, Luke Kennard, Cameron Payne, Shout out to Cameron Payne, Desmond Bain, Anthony Simon. Like,
I know,
okay,
but you're only.
okay.
I will say you're only looking at field goal percentage though. Like Duncan Robinson
3-point
takes. I know you are. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
3 point.
volume.
But Duncan Robinson takes a huge amount, and he's like never left alone. So him to be able to shoot that well is different from even Joe Harris, because Joe Harris plays with 3 of the most dynamic offensive players in the world. And
So
he just
to your
gets
point,
good looks.
3-point attempts is Curry, Hield, Lillard, then Robinson, and then Jordan Clarkson. So that it makes him valuable. But I'm not mad at if I was a Heat fan, I'm not mad at that signing. But my eyebrows were raised. That was cool.
Yeah, no, I think he is a legitimately fantastic shooter. I am defending him because like it's not like, oh, he shoots 46%. His quality of shots is not the same as some of those other guys, and he still is like a really good high volume, very accurate shooter. He's not Curry, but he's very good. He's in that next tier, which I would put with Joe Harris and Redick, and
I would too.
you know, Hield isn't quite as good, but Hield's in that high volume, accurate shooter. Bertans, you know, there aren't that many guys who fit the bill.
Yeah.
But still, it was a bit of a 2020 Bub throwback to me in that price tag.
You mentioned Curry. Can we quickly go through what the Warriors are thinking? Curry just signed an extension, I believe, for 4 years. So he is the heart and soul of that team. What are they going to do with all these bits and pieces we thought they were going to move for 2 draft days in a row? What's their plan?
I mean, has an organization been able to live down a quote like light years ahead?
Well, it's funny.
We've
been able to live up to the perfect pod and the most influential podcast. So what's the Warriors' problem?
Right, like you say it, just go make it happen, man.
yeah. Manifest.
We're light years ahead. Be light years ahead.
If they had just drafted LaMelo Ball, they would be light years ahead. But now they're holding all these pieces that could or could not fit. Wiggins made improvements. Weissman is still a nice prospect, but we know a little bit more about him, and his value kind of has adjusted. And then they went ahead and used their draft picks and didn't package them into a trade for a star. So my question to you is, like, do you think this is their plan?
You know, for a team that was really built around basketball IQ, skill, unselfishness, moving the ball, just kind of awareness of the court, you know, whether it was Iguodala or Bogut or Curry or Draymond, like they just were a very intelligent, smart team that went along with all those other great attributes and incredible shooting, but just an outlier intelligent team on the court. Like a lot of dudes who really see the floor and have great spatial awareness and excellent outlier passers for their positions. Like just really brilliant. And since then they're kind of like, yeah, we're done with that.
yeah.
What
Andrew
about
Wiggins?
like
What's he about?
What about someone who's kind of tall and can dunk?
yeah.
I was like, well, wasn't your whole thing
Yeah.
like, you know, that you guys operated on this unholy level because cerebrally, if that's even a word, you guys just connected and understood how the game was flowing and where people went. I mean, almost making the Phil Jackson triangle that's discussed in this intellectual sense actually become real.
Yeah.
And now it's like, we're just going to draft another project who's got ups, and hopefully that'll work. I don't know. But all that said, the Warriors' defense was very good last year. And
Wiggins?
most people don't know that. I think Wiggins is okay defensively. He's all right.
But he helped. Like, he's part of a good defense.
Yes, 100%. But they had a top 5 D last year. So I think if you're the Warriors, like,
Awesome.
well, if we can get Clay back, we can tinker around a little bit. You know, with Clay in that mix, he'll help us a lot on offense if he's able to be anything like the shooter he was in the past. And we'll have him and Curry and Dre, and they have that synergy. A couple other parts, we should be pretty good.
Yeah.
And then we'll also have these younger pieces that are there that we can develop. Maybe we'll package them for another star, or maybe they'll just become good and, you know, stay on the team as even guys like Dre and Thompson age out.
It's interesting, man. It's interesting. It's interesting to see what happened with the Warriors this month and also the Lakers. These two teams that are probably primed to be contenders in the West. Like, we thought they had the space to make some real noise, and the Lakers. There were so many rumors flying around. I know, like, the LA fan base goes off a little bit, but it was like Lowry and DeRozan for less money. And then we're going to add, Carmelo, which actually happened. And then we're going to add all these players because every player will take less money. Otto Porter Jr. to play here. And the only one that came to fruition was Carmelo Anthony, who is like a king. One of my favorite Knicks of all time. But, like, is a replacement level guy. If he makes LeBron happy, that's worth it. I don't think they're going to pay a lot for him. But
I love it. I love this Lakers team so much right now. I mean, along with just the absurdity of rebuilding the 2016 Lakers with Dwight and Baysgod and Ellington and Ariza, I don't care about that. But Westbrook and Melo, let's fucking go. Two of my favorite players, just in terms of characters. Melo, just the purity of his regal bearing. Westbrook, a snapping electrical wire. Fuck yeah. The Lakers were so boring last year. They were so boring when they won. LeBron and AD was just this dreary, really good pairing with a bunch of vets and like schmucks running around them like KCP and Kuz. Give me the insanity.
So
give me Melo jab steps and Westbrook pull-up jumpers. Let's go.
My theory is time travel is real. And Rob Pelinka was transported directly from 2008. So he doesn't really know what happened between 2008 and 2021. He was like, Melo, Russ, Ariza, who else we got? And he kind of formed his team that way. And I love it, right? Because it's like a meme. Like, this is my, like the LeBron in the pool meme. This is my life. Can I believe it? Like, this, for Lakers haters, this is the most delicious thing. Because they're going to be pretty good because Russell Westbrook is awesome. The fit is so interesting. All these other guys are fascinating characters, but you fear them less, right, than you did maybe potentially a month ago. A month ago, you were like, oh, they could just like rock it up to contention. After they add everything, it's like, I love it. I'm not really scared of this, and this is funnier, right?
I think they were scarier theoretically, but I also think you look at this team and you're like, but once you sift through all the like flotsam and jetsam, is that what it is? Jetsam and flotsam? But anyway, when you clear out those guys from actual meaningful minutes in the playoffs, when Melo's not on the court necessarily, or Trevor Ariza, I feel like the Lakers will actually be a very formidable team.
Yeah, I think as long as I say everything surrounding the Lakers, but in my heart I know as long as AD and LeBron are healthy, they're good enough to be the last team standing. So it all kind of hinges on both of their health. Everything else can like sloth off, and I think they will be hard to beat. Caruso leaving is a big deal. I think he was a kind of a nice defender, but they have Ariza. I still like Ariza, even though he's a time traveling misfit. But,
and they got Malik Monk too.
I like Malik Monk. He's yet to kind of blossom into a dependable player, but I've always liked that Kentucky King. So yeah, that was the most interesting ad a little bit because he has a higher ceiling than a lot of these other guys who we have more information on, right?
I mean, I just sort of look at it and say, when push comes to shove, it's going to be LeBron, AD, Russ,
Melo.
like Ellington and Baysgod,
yeah.
And you're like, that works. It'll be a couple 3-and-D guys and your 3 stars. Like all these other guys who've been thrown into the mix that we're laughing about, the Melos and Dwights. I just feel like their impact will be felt in backup minutes. And again, Pelinka's not a good GM. He is not doing a good job. But like push comes to shove, they have 3 really good players, and whether or not they figure out how to work together optimally remains to be seen. Mm-hmm. But these are exceptionally good players, two of which have won a title with just role players around them.
Yeah, man. I'm excited. So I think that was a very successful free agent period so far. More to come. Also, a very successful podcast with more to come as well.
The perfect pod is what you're saying, right?
Always. That's always what I'm saying.
Great. Cookies.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.